a lot of excitement around the 2016 election, and a lot of people losing friends and breaking friendships and kicking people out of their family and stuff like that. And then you kind of have the pandemic and the lockdowns and things like that in 2020, and you see more of that, more people breaking friendships, and it just started to feel like, overload, right? It started to feel everybody's trying to make me mad, and it's working. This network I've been able to build and sort of being accepted in this kind of community. I think that's the coolest part for me. Hearing from those listeners, that's really cool. And I think if you like, how do you build credibility as somebody that didn't really have any? I'm not a journalist. I've taken some journalism school, but I'm not a journalist. Didn't have a background already. Didn't have an audience to bring all this kind of stuff. I'm not a scientist either, although I have some science background, but I'm not a scientist either. How do you build credibility? You kind of do it, right? And I was lucky enough to have some folks that gave me the benefit of the doubt in the beginning. So talking about the movement, I'll say a bunch of things. One is, first, if you're going to think about playing in this space, I think it's, a lot of the folks that have been in it for a long time will tell you it can be rough. It can be rough because, you sort of feel like you've been doing it for decades, and we're all hungry for other folks that are interested in it and kind of get it, like appreciate what's happening here. And I think particularly it's a movement that is still, just more leans left in terms of the participants, even though they want to bridge the divide with everybody. The people that are actually doing it are often sort of left leaning. Now, that's not 100%. There are groups that, all the groups are trying to involve folks from across the spectrum, but that's a big piece. Like if you're more right leaning and you think people in this group are not doing it right, then get involved and tell them they're not doing it right. And because they want that feedback, they are honest and they aren't trying to do a left agenda or something like that. They want to bridge these divides.
Recently you put out a Substack post about how sort of the vision for Outrage Overload is evolving to be more of a sort of broader media organization. So congrats on that. That's an exciting next step, next phase shift. So looking forward to seeing what comes there. And I'd love to learn a little bit about kind of the history behind it and what it takes to sort of set up a media entity like you're trying to do, focused on kind of depolarization and a media entity looking at the media, itself. And yeah, just curious to know, like, again, the challenges of trying to bring an idea to life, if we can talk a little bit about that, maybe explore that a little bit to end off. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I should probably be asking you this question. You've been doing it as well. So,
We could go back and
um,
forth.
well, yeah. So, on the history part, we may have touched on it a little bit last time, but if you, we're in the middle of the world like everyone else in 2022, and sort of seeing sort of had a lot of excitement around the 2016 election, and a lot of people losing friends and breaking friendships and kicking people out of their family and stuff like that over that. And then you kind of have the 20 pandemic and the lockdowns and things like that in 2020, and you see more of that, more people breaking friendships and don't invite Uncle Joe to the Thanksgivings anymore. So in the midst of all that, and then and in just the heat of social media and also traditional media, I'm living in it like everybody else, and it just started to feel like, overload, right? It started to feel everybody's trying to make me mad, and it's working. Like I'm really mad.
Yeah.
And then so why am I mad? Like why are all these people trying to make me mad? And I said, well, I bet I'm kind of a science nerd. I was basically retired from tech for many years, so I had the opportunity to do something like this, and I thought, well, maybe my gimmick for breaking into this idea could be kind of a science niche, kind of a pop science. I wouldn't say pop science, but I'm not necessarily we're not going to go through all the math and that kind of thing, but we can bring some of the work being done looking at these problems to an audience that's sort of science curious. They don't necessarily have to be full on into the sciences. And so make it accessible language, and try to explain some of these research papers and have the actual authors of these papers and researchers and scientists, come on and do that. And that was kind of the thought that I had. Was it a blog? Was it a this? Was it that? And then it evolved into a podcast because I felt like it was about the right balance, right? You could go deep enough. It could go as deep as you want, right? And you weren't restricted to kind of a 2-minute thing. And maybe there's an audience for people that are driving in their car and would listen to this kind of stuff. So that's where all that came from. I'm living in the world. It's happening to me. It's happening around me. And maybe we can maybe we can look into this a little bit more. And I thought somebody's got to be looking at this. And of course, that's what I discovered. Lots of people are looking at it. And so that's kind of how it all started. And then along the path, I had the show. So first I started with the podcast, and that's pretty much what it was, just a podcast. That was the only thing we were doing. And then, and then you get this different feedback from people saying, well, so I would do a little bit of Instagram stuff, and then people would be like, "Well, I don't follow the podcast, but I'm glad that you're doing these little Instagram reels." So it's like, okay, well, that's the only content they're getting from me is a like an Instagram reel. And I used to be sort of mad about that, right? Like, oh man, I want to listen to the podcast. It was like, then I just started to embrace all that and say, some people want to read, some people want to, so it's that classic meet people where they are thing, and that's where this has kind of evolved more to. I'm building a following on Substack. I get a lot of great feedback and my stuff gets reshared. And so that's, been really encouraging.
Somebody who is like entrepreneurial who wants to do something like this and like sort of bring them some value from your experience. Like, I mean, like for example, could you one question is as you're evolving into different kinds of media, right? You start with a podcast, then you do the, clips, then different lengths. I mean, we're going through a similar evolution ourselves. And that's it's just continuous, right? How are you making those decisions? Is it really just like let the feedback come and then where people want me to go, that's where I go? Or do you have like a roadmap of like, okay, this year we want to hit these different types, we want to open up these new platforms? Or are you kind of just like let the feedback come and I'll go there? How do you evolve your process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both because it's kind of iterative, right? You sort of go in a direction that you think people are there, and then you kind of see how that goes and what people are looking for. For
Yeah.
me, anyway, that's kind of what I've done.
Mhm.
And again, it's some of his hours in the day I have to prioritize.
Right.
And so I've kind of moved like, oh, I just don't have time for that one anymore or that one anymore. I'm going to focus here, here, and here because this seems to be where it's resonating more.
That's
So
resonating.
for some of me, it's just resources
Yeah.
availability. But yeah, a lot of it is, where does it seem to be resonating the most with people? And some of it, I just maybe haven't completely stopped, but I don't do as much in that space because it's, not getting the same kind of reaction.
Got it. Got it. What's been the most enjoyable part of building, or some of the more enjoyable parts of building Outrage Overload? How long have you been at it? When was it started?
We started in late 2022,
Late
so it'll be
2022.
3 years, or it
Okay.
is about 3 years now.
Yeah. So what's been the most enjoyable part for you so far?
Well, the most incredible part is really build this network I've been able to build and sort of being accepted
Yeah.
in this kind of community. I think that's the coolest part for me. Right next to that is just getting feedback from real people. I mean, because at some point the listener is who matters, the reader, whoever the audience is, matters, and so hearing from those listeners, that's really cool. And I think another, good and bad, but for the most part, this we've done a bunch of episodes about negativity bias, so you get the one bad story and you focus all on that, right?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, even the criticisms have been helpful to improve the show, so that's all been useful, but overwhelmingly positive feedback. That's been really great. So those are some of the main ones, and I'm very proud that the show and the audience, I should say, across the show and the written media and so on, self-identify as is kind of hard sometimes to get these stats. But self-identify as, sort of 60-40 blue to reds. We're
Mm,
not a completely academic leaning,
mm, mm.
audience. And I really respect and appreciate the feedback and the engaged people that are on the right that are, often critical, I think, because if you talk academics, you're just going to throw a dart, you're going to probably hit someone that is more left leaning, right?
Yeah,
In
yeah, yeah.
academia, and I try to track that a little bit too. Like, who are my what are the spectrum, political spectrum of my guests? I kind of try to keep an eye on that, but anyway, so I mean, they'll often criticize me. So like that was just those are just left, talking points or whatever. And I love that feedback. I really want to engage with those people and bring in, those perspectives.
Yeah, I mean, there's an interesting sort of cultural nuance here that I think is really interesting of like generally, I'm going to be generalizing, but my sense is over the last at least 10, 15 years, like folks who identify more as conservative have probably felt somewhat alienated by the institutions that create culture. And so they just have a general like a much heavier skeptical orientation towards these kinds of things.
Oh yeah, there's data.
Yeah.
Clear data
Yeah,
showing
I
this.
mean,
Yeah.
this is just, yeah. Anyway, I have various thoughts on that myself, but I want to stick with Outrage Overload. But it's good that I mean, I would say it's an achievement that you've been able to achieve this kind of balance because the trend in media is like pick your niche or pick your side and then serve them, right? Like it's almost like facilitate the echo chamber rather than try to break it. Is something you see not everywhere, but you see that a lot, and the incentives are sort of lined up in that direction. So it's great to be able to achieve that some level of balance there. Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting to have folks that are engaged because
Yes.
that it's really because they're honest and like and it's really there's like this two sides of that. They go like, well, you didn't do it very well, but really respect that you tried.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool that they'll even give you
Yeah.
that much credit.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I understand like the feedback can be very affirming. What have been some of the challenges? Like what are some of the growth challenges that you had to go through in order to like keep evolving, keep building, keep moving forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we're in a niche world, right? So you're going to first be talking about people that don't want to fight about politics as much and somehow want to be calmed down. So you've got that niche right there, and then you've got sort of the science. It's nice if they kind of have some interest in the science, at least passing interest in the science, and will kind of and want more depth and nuance. So
Yeah.
right there, you've niched down pretty far, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
we're not talking about we're not going to be how Chicago housewives kind of numbers ever probably, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I think the biggest challenge and in terms of growth really is the things around how this whole space is not very evolved and it isn't known really. There aren't words to describe it very well. I mean, if I like I said, if I said bridging movement, no one knows what I'm talking about. So that's one big challenge. And there aren't really places for people that are interested in these topics to hang out that much, right? I mean, if you want to go to a very partisan place, they're easy to find. If you want to go to a place that isn't doing that, they're not out there, harder to find out there, right? So that's one challenge is kind of reaching the audience. The audience is out there, but reaching them can be challenged because they're more defined by a psychographic than a demographic, right? So it's not like every male that's 34 fits this profile, right? I don't really have that, right? Because my audience is kind of all over the spectrum demographically and more fits this psychographic of, sort of curious, maybe a little stressed out by politics and looking for, some reset basically.
Yeah, I would say we share a similar, probably psychographic profile in that sense. And yes, it is hard to reach. You can't just like tweak the Instagram filter tool and find them. You have to be more thoughtful and think. And yes, there are, I guess, the opportunities in trying to create spaces for these people. Maybe that's what they're yearning for. So yes, so that's the main growth challenge is reaching the audience. Yeah. Any other learnings? Anything else that you want to sort of discuss about the journey of sort of building this. When you mentioned the 5-year plan, that really struck out to me of like, did you have a 5-year vision from the beginning, or did you sort of let things evolve? Like, how do you think about that sort of thing?
Well, I always, try to do some kind of an exercise to think about that level. Now,
Yeah,
obviously, it's sort of fluid, right? These
yeah,
aren't cast in stone necessarily, but they're good to return to and see
yeah,
what was I thinking, last year or last month even. But I try to revisit these kind of things 3 or 4 times a year at least, right?
yeah,
Especially these longer term
yeah,
thoughts. What was
yeah,
I thinking then? Does it still apply now? And how do I want to update it? So I always do that. I do that exercise at least, right? But it's not, like it's not carved in stone and it's not, you don't always necessarily end up in that same place you wanted to go to. But often, you can revisit that and go, wow, that still kind of works. I can accept that. I still want to go there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's like you're not by creating a vision, you're not locking yourself in. You have to use it as a tool. I mean, this is a challenge that I myself have faced. I think many people face this is like they create a plan and then they make the plan their prison. And no, the plan, all of these things are tools for you to sort of to help you. They're not supposed to imprison you. Yeah, anything else that you'd like to share regarding just kind of the journey so far and what is your thinking around this new evolution into a broader media organization? Is it just that you realize you have to meet the audience where they are and so you have to become competent in all these different form factors, or is there some broader evolution in the vision or something that anything you'd like to share about the journey and the path forward?
yeah, I mean, I think it's there. I come from a long time in sort of tech and the business side of that, investing and analyzing business plans and things like that. And I think probably a lot of us doing this kind of thing could spend more time thinking like that a little bit. I mean, I know a lot of times artists say, "Oh, I can't think like that," or I won't be able to have my creative side come out and all that kind of thing. But I think you do have to think about some things from that perspective. Like if you think of a business, no sort of startup sort of thinks they're going to start this company and on day one they're trying to sort of dominate the planet, right? They're
Yeah.
going to find a segment, like they're going to find an underserved segment, right? And some people might in the podcast world or in some of these other worlds you might call it your niche or whatever, but you're looking at some segment that is not served well and you feel like you can serve them better, and then you just own that, like really own that. And I think maybe some of that thinking could apply to these artistic adventures that we take on. Um, and maybe that's just me being sort of my 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 business side head, but the strategy side head. But I did a lot of consulting for CEOs, and this was probably one of the things that is pretty universal with CEOs that are kind of out there trying to forge their company is they're focused entirely on the product. And like if you start talking to them, they'll just tell you that this product is so cool. Like, look, it has a red button there, and there's a blue line here, and there's a chrome stripe there. And wait until you see this thing, right?
No.
And yeah, but and so, well, who wants that? Like, what's the problem at solving this kind of thing? And I think we can have those kind of, we should have those kind of, we probably make sense if we spend a little bit of energy having those kind of dialogues about
Right.
this more creative work that we're doing too. Like, what problem are you solving for who, why now, and what sets you apart? And how are you going to sort of establish, plant a flag and have an audience that wants to carry that flag with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess maybe the first question to ask if you're engaging in an artistic or creative endeavor is this just a mode of self-expression for me? Or am I trying to have an impact in the world? Motive here, right?
Right.
If it's just a mode of self-expression, that's a beautiful thing, but it's for your own
Sure.
growth, your own transformation. Do what you got to do. But if you're trying to have an impact, if you're trying to make some change in the world, then you have to like sort of think back, like start with the end in mind, right? I have the Seven Habits book right here somewhere. Like think with the end in mind and sort of work your way backwards and step by step, kind of try to build there. That kind of discipline and thinking, I mean, I think us and our team should sort of revisit that also from time to time. So I appreciate that. Yeah, this is, one last one, if you don't mind. Just curious if you have time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You mentioned, one of the more affirming things about doing this was building that network and becoming a part of this community. Anything you want to share about this still nascent bridge building community? And also how, again, bringing value to this aspiring builder who hopefully is listening to this, how do you actually become part of a community in a way that's not, because I don't think you've done it in this way, in a way that's not so, what's the word, like give and take, not so transactional, but actually become part of any community and actually build a network that sort of feels enriching personally and is also a very valuable force in the world. Like, how do you, any advice on that?
I have no idea. I mean, yeah, I just sort of, I guess that will be my answer is just sort of do it by doing it, right? I
What about
mean,
that?
I think if you like, how do you build credibility as somebody in this that didn't really have any, I'm not a journalist. I've taken some journalism school, but I'm not a journalist. Didn't have a background already. Didn't have an audience to bring all this kind of stuff. I'm not a scientist either, although I have some science background, but I'm not a scientist either. How do you build credibility? You kind of do it, right? And I was lucky enough to have some folks that gave me the benefit of the doubt in the beginning, which then I could sort of build from and just keep going forward. Yeah, but I definitely think so. Talking about the movement, I mean, I'll say a bunch of things. One is, I mean, first, if you're going to think about playing in this space, I think it's a lot of the folks that have been in it for a long time will tell you it can be rough. It can be rough because, you sort of feel like you've been doing it for decades and things
Nobody
haven't gotten any
behaves. Yeah.
better.
Like if
Yeah.
people could just see what I'm going to tell them, everything would be good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get those kind of questions sometimes. Someone will reach out and they say, "Oh, I've listened to a bunch of your episodes." So I have some question like, "Well, how many Trump supporters have you converted?" It's like, I'm not in that business. Like,
Yeah,
have you really listened to any episodes? I'm
yeah,
not sure you
yeah,
listened to any episodes, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm sure you sort of get that kind of thing too. But
yeah.
people hear what they want to hear, right? But I think in the bridging movement, first, yeah, going it's an uphill climb, small things. But it's also a really great movement in terms of we're all hungry for other folks that are interested in it and kind of get it, like appreciate what's happening here. And I think particularly it's a movement that is still just more leans left in terms of the participants, even though they want to bridge the divide with everybody. The people that are actually doing it are often sort of left leaning. Now, that's not 100%. There are groups that, I mean, all the groups are trying to involve folks from across the spectrum, but that's a big piece. Like if you're more right leaning and you think people in this group are not doing it right, then get involved and tell them they're not doing it right. And because they want that feedback, they are honest and they aren't trying to do a left agenda or something like that. They want to bridge these divides. And there are groups that are both bridge building and doing advocacy too. And you can either say that's okay or that's not. But, and if you're doing advocacy in the right way, in a bridge building way, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But anyway, I would say that's one thing. If you're sort of right leaning and you think this video isn't for you, believe me, they want to have you involved. They want to hear your feedback. Tell me I'm doing it wrong. Tell me how I can do better.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Yes, David is also featured in our upcoming collection. So if anybody's interested, probably when you're seeing this, it'll be on the website. And where can people find you if they want to follow your work a little bit more?
Yeah, so the best place to start is our website, outrageoverload.net, and it has all of the other things that we do there. So you can get to the podcast, you can get to the Substack, you can get to and you can see our events and what we have scheduled there. So yeah, just at outrageoverload.net is the place to start. That has my contact information, and that's there for a reason. Use it. I will promise to respond.
Okay. Excellent. David Beckemeyer, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.